Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Halal and Haram Meat in Quran is the subject of this video. I apologize for my voice. I've got a cold, but I wanted to finish this today. Many Muslims who migrate to Western countries often grapple with the question of halal and haram meats. Specifically, they find themselves pondering the definition of halal meat as outlined in the Quran. Should they solely purchase meat from stores displaying the halal sign, or opt for packages explicitly marked as such? Additionally, should they restrict their dining experiences to halal restaurants only? Regarding the subject of halal and haram animal meats, a notable disparity arises between the Quranic text and Islamic tradition, commonly known as Sunnah. To maintain conciseness in this video, I will only address key verses pertaining to a specific question and skip over the similar ones. So the first question is, what meats are defined as haram in Quran? In chapter 2, verse 173, we read, "He has only forbidden you to eat carrion, which is the dead animals you may find on the roads or on the side of the roads, blood, swine, which is same as pig, and what is slaughtered in the name of any other than Allah. But if someone is compelled by necessity, neither driven by desire nor exceeding immediate need, they will not be sinful. Surely Allah is all-forgiving, most merciful." You can find a complete list of haram foods in verse 3 of chapter 5. So the wordings highlighted in yellow, they define what is a haram meat. That is, if an animal is slaughtered in the name of any other than Allah, then its meat is haram and we cannot eat it. As you know, in the past, humans used to sacrifice animals for idols, or at our time, some people may sacrifice animals to pay respect to a sacred person, or maybe a king even. In all these cases, they will be haram meat. Other than that, in addition to the three items named here, carrion, blood, and swine, besides these, everything else, every other food is basically halal. In the second important part of this verse, where I've underlined, God tells us that if we are in a situation that we are starving and maybe our life is in danger by hunger, and there's no other food available to us except the forbidden ones in this verse or in other verses of Quran, then in such a situation we can even disregard God's own words and eat these items as much as we need to survive, and not more, of course. This verse has huge significance in the way we can interpret all other commands in Quran. Because of this verse, we can strongly argue that God Himself has given the highest priority to rationality over all His commands, over His words in Quran. The second question is, can we buy meat from non-Muslims and can we eat in any restaurant? To answer this question, we can refer to verse number 5 of chapter 5 in Quran. In part of that verse, we read, "Today all good and clean foods have been made lawful for you. Similarly, the food of people of the book is permissible for you and yours is permissible for them. So the word good and clean is a translation of the Arabic word of tayyibat, which we will talk about later more. And the expression of people of the book refers to Christians and Jews in Quran. What this verse tells us is if we are living in a community of Christians and Jews, which includes most of the Western countries, then we can buy our meat from any butcher shop or any shop basically. We can eat at any restaurant. We can also go to their home and sit with them and eat their food as long as it's not pork, blood, and dead body of animals. It's only the pork that might be the food of some, I believe, Christians. They don't touch the other ones either. So this will enable us to basically socialize with non-Muslims in the community that we live in. This verse also may bring up the question of non-Muslims do not name God at the time of a slaughter. How can we eat their meat? As we notice in the previous verse, as long as they're not naming any other one than Allah, which means if they're not naming somebody's at the time of killing the animal for food, it is halal. In other words, if they don't name anything, anybody, it is still halal. So there is no contradiction between these two verses. The third question is there a condition of naming God at the time of killing an animal so that it will become halal? This will clarify what I just said. If we refer to verse number 4 in chapter 5, we read, "They ask you, O Prophet, what is permissible for them to eat? Say, what is good and lawful? Also, what is caught by your hunting animals and birds of prey, which you have trained as instructed by Allah. So eat what they catch for you, but mention the name of Allah over it first, and be mindful of Allah. Surely Allah is swift in reckoning." What is interesting in this verse is God allows us to eat the hunt of the hunting birds or hunting animals that we train them and they go and hunt something and bring it for us. The way this verse clarifies naming God at the time of slaughter is that when these birds or when these animals bring their prey to us, they're usually dead. It is true that this verse tells us that we should name God first before eating, but that is not at the time of that prey is dying. Basically, it is possible that prey, when comes to us, when the hunting animal brings it to us, it is already dead. Because of that, we can say there is no condition of naming Allah at the time of killing an animal for food, because the hunting bird, when it brings us its prey, it is already dead. Even if it is dead in one case, that is sufficient for us to say that this condition is not necessary. Yet we are instructed to name Allah before eating, I would like to clarify that Quran tells us that we should name Allah before anything, basically, as we will see it in the upcoming verse. Question number 4 is, how come Quran says don't eat anything unless you have pronounced God's name on it? So if we look at the verse 118 in chapter 6, usually we see this translation, and I kept it as it is to clarify this. So eat only of what is slaughtered in Allah's name, if you truly believe in His revelations. This translation, as it is exact opposite of the first verse that we went through. If you remember, we said the only meat that is haram is the one that is slaughtered for other than Allah, or named on Him other than Allah's name. This would be exact opposite of that verse and would be completely contradictory if this word of slaughter exists in the original wordings of this verse. When we look at the Arabic wordings, we don't see any word equivalent to slaughtered. They use slaughtered instead of alayha. Alayha means on them, exactly. And by no means it can be translated as slaughtered. So the correct translation of this verse is, don't eat anything unless God's name is named on them, if you believe in the verses. So as we can see, the word mimma means anything, does not refer to meat. That includes anything, rice or vegetables. Basically, this verse is instructing us before eating, name God. So based on the wordings of this verse, we can say that this verse does not have any conflict with the other verses, and what it means is name God before eating, and it doesn't have anything to do with slaughtering of animals. So question number 5 is, considering the verse 28 of chapter 22, doesn't it mean that we should name God before killing an animal to be halal? We read the verse as, that they may witness the benefits for themselves and mention the name of Allah on appointed days over the sacrificial animals He has provided for them. So eat their meat and feed the desperately poor. So what is referred to is most probably the animals, the sheep, cows, maybe camels that are kept for the sacrifice at the end of the ritual of Hajj in Mecca. So it could be interpreted as you should name Allah during those days to be clarified that this is going to be for Allah and it's going to be sacrificed for Allah and nobody else. Even if we consider this as naming Allah on other occasions over the animals that they're going to be slaughtered, still it doesn't contradict with the fact that the other verse instructs us only the animals slaughtered in any other name of Allah are haram. It does not have any contradiction with that, and that is very interesting. In other words, you can still even name Allah at the time of a slaughter of an animal, but this does not mean that the ones that Allah's name is not mentioned over them are haram. Does not mean that at all. The last question is, can we eat all meat that is not haram by Quran's definition? This brings up the second condition that is necessary for a meat to be edible according to Quran. That condition is being sanitary. Sanitary is the best translation for the Arabic word of tayyib or tayyibat in plural form. The other translation would be clean, clean of diseases, clean of health issues for humans. So, in order for a meat to be edible according to all verses of Quran that we put together, that meat has to satisfy two conditions. The first is being sanitary, not causing any danger for people's health. And secondly, it should not be one of the haram defined foods as we discussed before. So, based on this definition of halal and edible foods in Quran, we can say all seafoods are also halal as long as they are disease free, as long as they're sanitary, they do not cause any health issue for humans. Apart from this, someone may ask, we still don't eat everything that we see around us. That is very true. The word tayyibat would also include the the animals that are commonly considered clean and nice and eatable for humans for different reasons. And that range of the animals vary very little from culture to culture. To sum up, I should say that Quran instructs us to name God before eating anything, whether it's vegetables or meat. And also, Quran does not require naming God for a meat to be halal when we are slaughtering that animal for food. Furthermore, the condition of being sanitary is also emphasized in Quran by using the words of tayyibat in a number of different verses. I hope this video was helpful to you and has clarified the subject of halal meat in Quran. Thank you for watching this video and see you next time.